This is Arab Talk on KPOO 89.5 FM in San Francisco. This is Arab Talk with Jess and Jamal. I'm Jess Ghannam.
And I'm Jamal Dejani.
Jamal, Israel's murderous genocidal campaign continues unabated in Gaza. Within the last 24 hours, the Israeli military has bombed, strafed, and almost completely destroyed one of the last remaining medical facilities in Gaza, the Al-Ahli hospital, killing dozens of innocent civilian men, women, and children. Similarly, in the last week, Israel has completely bisected the Gaza Strip and has taken over essentially 50% of the Gaza Strip, isolating communities again, displacing Palestinians in Gaza yet again. It is a catastrophic situation that we keep describing, Jamal. Food, water, and medicine continues to be denied entry into Gaza, and the United Nations continues to warn of catastrophic starvation and consequences, and yet the world continues to turn a blind eye. We're going to be covering those stories as well as a recent development where the IDF unit involved in the recent really horrific attacks and murder of over a dozen Palestinian paramedics was done by a brigade known for its atrocities, an Israeli brigade known for its atrocities, and led by a general known for committing horrific acts of violence against Palestinians. If you remember that particular story, Jamal, over a dozen Palestinian paramedics were killed by Israeli gunfire, and the Israelis said, well, they were acting suspiciously and their lights were off. Well, we had video showing that the lights were flashing on the ambulances. Paramedics were wearing reflective gear. They were murdered anyways. And a really important development, Jamal, a recent Pew poll found that 53% of Americans have an extremely negative view of Israel. This is extraordinary. And in the last 2 years, this number has almost doubled. So Israel is losing the worldwide battle in terms of its perception. People no longer in the United States perceive Israel in a positive light. In fact, they perceive it in a very negative light, Jamal. And if you break out that data with respect to age, the younger you are, the more negative view you have of Israel. They are clearly losing. And then as part of our ongoing coverage, Jamal, we know that leaked data recently revealed a massive Israeli campaign to remove pro-Palestine posts on Facebook and Instagram. No surprise to us, but a leaked data revealed that this was a massive campaign of Israel to remove pro-Palestine posts. Again, close coordination between Meta, Facebook, Instagram, and the Israeli government. But before we get to all those stories, Jamal, we're going to watch a really great interview that you did with the French lawyer, Sarah Sameur, specializing in international law and human rights and member of the Council for JURDI, Jurists for the Respect of International Law, discussing why President Macron has been on notice with the letter stating that France has been derelict in its obligations by not intercepting Netanyahu's plane over France when he traveled to the United States. So lots of stories. Great interview, Jamal. We have a packed show today.
That's right, Jess. So let's start with our interview with Sarah Sameur. When the International Criminal Court issued arrest warrants last November for Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant for war crimes and crimes against humanity, it was the first time it had issued such warrants against Western allied senior officials in the court's 22-year history. Signatories to the Rome Statute are obliged to act on the ICC's behalf by apprehending anyone the court determines should be brought to trial, and except for Hungary, all EU countries are signatories. However, a recent article in the Middle East Eye, France criticized for allowing Netanyahu's plane to use its airspace, says that a group of legal experts in France, the Association of Jurists for the Respect of International Law, otherwise known as JURDI, put President Macron on notice with a letter stating that France had been derelict in its obligations by not intercepting Prime Minister Netanyahu's plane once it had entered the sovereign airspace of France in the beginning of April. French officials had claimed that France's airspace did not fall under its jurisdiction in this case. Joining us this week on Arab Talk to explain the legal stipulations of the ICC is Sarah Sameur. She is a French lawyer specializing in international law and human rights and is a member of the Council of JURDI, Jurists for the Respect of International Law, a French organization whose mission is to uphold international law. Welcome to Arab Talk, Sarah.
Hi, Jamal. Thanks for having me.
So, since the ICC issued an arrest warrant for Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in November 2024, he has passed freely through France's airspace in early February and April of this year. How has France been derelict as a signatory to the Rome Statute in not apprehending or intercepting his plane?
Yes, thank you. That's why we were really concerned in our association that a state party to the Rome Statute, like France, has allowed officially, because we have now the response from a source, a diplomatic source, that the official plan carrying the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu could use the French airspace to cross our territory and to go to the US. And we really want to recall that we have already sent a letter. It was at the end of November 2024. We didn't receive any response about the French presidency because we learned from different newspapers and thanks to Flyware and Flightradar 24 that the official Israeli government aircraft crossed the French airspace, and in spite of the international arrest warrant issued against Benjamin Netanyahu by the ICC, and France must respect its obligation under the Rome Statute, to which it is a party, and as well as all the decision of the ICC, including the arrest warrant issued for Benjamin Netanyahu. We wanted to underline that France is obliged to cooperate fully with the ICC, because we know that the ICC doesn't have an international police, doesn't have an international force to stop the potential war criminals. So the question of immunity is not relevant before the ICC, and that's why we wanted to send this letter to the French authorities.
What kind of legal language maneuvers has France's government employed to maintain that it is abiding by international law?
France was using the terms of we do respect the Rome Statute because we are a member state of the Rome Statute, and we respect the decision of the ICC. Nonetheless, there is the immunity that should be benefits to the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, but this is not correct. This is not correct, and the Rome Statute is really clear about that. At the Article 27 of the Rome Statute, it says that there is no immunity before the ICC when it concerns the war crimes and the criminal crimes and serious criminal crimes in front of the ICC. Because what's the point of the ICC if we can object with the immunity? And I want to underline one point, is that there was a press conference on September 2024, and the French authority replied that each state party to the Rome Statute has the obligation to cooperate with the ICC to execute its arrest warrant when it was about the application of the relevant provision for Vladimir Putin. And so Vladimir Putin when he visited Mongolia. And Mongolia didn't arrest Vladimir Putin. About this, 1 month later, the pre-trial chamber 2 of the ICC concluded that the Mongolia failing to arrest Mr. Putin while Mr. Putin was on the territory of Mongolia, and Mongolia has failed to comply with the court request for cooperation in this regard. And it was contrary to provision of Rome Statute. So the immunity that Emmanuel Macron, the French president, was using is not relevant. It's contrary to the Rome Statute, it's contrary to international law, and it's contrary to the diplomatic position, the standard position that France has before in terms of international law. And it's not a really good signal that France is sending to the world and to the struggle against impunity and the struggle against war criminals.
Airspace is always clearly designated as the sovereign territory of a country.
Exactly.
Isn't it understood internationally that each country has authority over its airspace, even to the point of defending it if there is a plane or other object that could be deemed unfriendly? How can France argue that its airspace is, in this instance, of no concern to it?
It did not respond. That's why we didn't have answer. It tries to hide the problem by saying that it's about a plane that crossed the French Aryan space. So we respect the provision of the Rome Statute. But the Rome Statute is really clear. It's the territory. And when we just have a look on our proper criminal code in France, the sovereignty, the territory, it's about the airspace, the maritime space, and the terrestrial space. So it does not make any sense to say that because it's just a plane, he was not on our territory. It shows one problem. It means that if France has given an authorization, maybe it gives guarantee to Benjamin Netanyahu and to this aircraft for not be intercepted and for not being arrested. And that's the problem.
So based on this answer, or the government's answer, hypothetically, if the plane landed on French territory, let's say for refueling or for whatever reason, would the French government have arrested Benjamin Netanyahu?
It should. And then the plane would be intercepted, and then it belongs to the judicial authorities to make what the arrest warrant said and to send to the Hague to the International Criminal Court. But that's why other countries such as Iceland, the Netherlands, Spain said that they will execute the arrest warrant whether Benjamin Netanyahu will cross the space. And so that's why we've seen with different newspaper sources that the plane make a deviation of more than 400 kilometers.
Yeah, I was going to ask you actually about this because actually in supporting JURDI's argument, you noted that the flight path of Netanyahu's plane avoids certain countries in Europe for fear of being intercepted, lengthening the flight path considerably. Talk about these countries.
Yes. Yeah, but we know in principle that Belgium, the Netherlands, Ireland, Lithuania, Slovenia, and Spain, of course, gave their strongest indication that they will execute the arrest warrant against Benjamin Netanyahu since the 21st of November 2024, when the ICC officially issued these warrants. The outgoing Belgian Prime Minister Alexandre De Croo said also that Belgium would assume its responsibility and it should not be double standards. A kind of diplomacy would be different between certain countries and others. And even the Dutch foreign minister, it was Caspar Veldkamp, he talked to the parliament saying that Netanyahu would be arrested in the Netherlands, and that's why he canceled a visit, an official visit, following the ICC warrant. It was the same for Ireland and Spain, but Ireland and Spain jointly said to the EU that we needed to take some, at the EU level, some sanctions for the operation in Gaza and in Lebanon. And of course, they would act on the warrant, like Lithuania, Slovenia, and the other countries. So France was the last countries, let's say, with Germany and Italy, to be quite shy and to say always the same sentence. It's just a narrative. We respect the Rome Statute, we respect international law. Meanwhile, we will not make it effective. We will not respect our obligation because there is an immunity which doesn't work in front of the ICC. The ICC does not look at this kind of immunity and personal immunity. So France is a little bit kind of really shy and not in the movement of most of the EU countries today about the international arrest warrant that should be effective against war criminals.
So since the 1990s, let's say, the EU has been a leading force in both establishing and strengthening international justice mechanism, and until most recently, all were members of the ICC. Now that the laws are being applied to Western leaders, Israel in particular, how are notable supporters of Israel reconciling their professed support for international law, yet sidestepping their obligations to enforce the ICC's rulings if needed be, in particular, like you mentioned, France, now you have Germany, the UK, and Italy. How are they sidestepping their obligations?
They are struck, they are struck in the middle of a double standard speech, a double standard practice of international law. So they are trying to find a narrative that could be a kind of artificial bridge between their obligation to the Rome Statute and to the decision of the ICC. And they are trying to maintain a kind of friendship and really open-minded position to Israel. It's like the question of the recognition by France lately about Palestine. It's always, the kind of signal that maintaining, the status quo on fundamental question. So I don't see any, positive evolution for Germany or for Italy or other allies of the Israeli government today. And it's always, a manner of not responding to the real question. What's happening in Gaza? We have genocidal acts and genocidal speech. There are still the military occupation in the West Bank. There are still a growing colonization in the Palestinian territories. And we need to find solution for this. We need to act now and act for ceasefire. We don't need to discuss for hundreds and thousands of times about how can we respect our obligation for the ICC, for the Rome Statute. We need to respect it, and we need to execute international arrest warrant. Otherwise, it does not have any sense to have created the International Criminal Court.
Well, as you know, the United States is not part of the ICC. It has criticized the ICC, it has criticized the ICJ, even there were indirect threats made. But just recently, the Prime Minister of Hungary, Viktor Orban, gave what the New York Times called a red carpet for an accused war criminal, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He was widely criticized. He has now withdrawn Hungary from the Rome Statute, saying it had only been heartfelt. Do you think other EU countries will follow if pushed to choose between upholding international law and Israel? Is this the stress test for European values?
You know, it's really interesting because we were discussing in another conference, and we were saying that, Gaza and Palestine is today and since more than 18 months the stress test for international law. But international law, human rights law, international humanitarian law today. And that's why we are facing, a really difficult times today in terms of the respect of human rights for Palestinian people and for human rights for all the people, for all the victims all over the world. This is a stress test period, effectively. And I think that Hungary just showed that it did not manage to preserve the rule of law, the respect of international law, the respect of EU law, because I'm not sure that Hungary will maintain a good relationship with other partners in the EU. And it gives a wrong signal saying that we can ignore the ICC and step out when it comes to an ally. I'm really disappointed by this position, but I'm not really surprised. I know that for France, it won't be at this stage, but all in all, at the end of the day, by saying some speech which does not, it's not followed by effective acts and effective behavior for ceasefire, for helping the ICC to pursue, to judge potential and suspect of wars crimes, it's really, really dangerous. And we are facing several violations of international law, and there were several violations since 18 months. So we are not quite surprised about this position. It's not in the honor of Hungary. It's not in the honor of the other EU states, not to be clear on the question. And I'm afraid that because of the sovereignty, it's one of the most important principle in international law and international relations. Sovereignty gave the power to the states to step in and step out of a treaty. So we do not have a real power if Hungary decided to step out of the ICC and the Rome Statute to do anything against Hungary.
But other EU countries are unequivocal about their staunch support for implementing international law, regardless of which country has perpetrated the crime. Who are these countries?
It's about Germany. We know that Germany has said after the international arrest warrant saying that nobody is above the law. So we need to apply what the ICC said. But at the same time, it's really difficult for Germany, given their history and given the relationship and their cooperation, military cooperation, economic and financial cooperation with the state of Israel, to say that it will arrest Benjamin Netanyahu and the ex-minister Yoav Gallant if they were, on their territory. So it didn't respond exactly, and it was the same for Italy, quite shy about the question, and France. The other states that have said, like Belgium, Netherlands, Ireland, Iceland, are really clear on the question, and it's always about, the UK, Germany, and Italy, which has the strongest difficulty to maintain the respect of international law, where with this narrative of relationship, friendship, and cooperation with the state of Israel.
The ICC depends on its signatories to enforce the law because it does not have the power of enforcement itself. Is there a mechanism to hold countries accountable who are not fulfilling their obligations?
Yes, and as you said, under the Rome Statute, there are a chapter, the chapter 9, about the judicial assistance and cooperation, obligation of cooperation for the member states of the Rome Statute. What it can happen is that the registry of the ICC can take the case and send some verbal notes or reports to France saying that we ask member states to cooperate with the ICC, and we've seen that you let the aircraft cross a French airspace. And then after that, the chamber, the judges, can take the case, and as they did for Mongolia, they can give and conclude by a decision, an official decision, saying that France has failed to comply with the court's request for cooperation in this regard, and it's contrary to the provision of Rome Statute, and it prevents the court from exercising its function and power under the Article 87 of the Rome Statute. So it can be this kind of process, and then this question can be raised during the annual assembly of the member states of the ICC for discussion.
There is considerable turmoil in the EU now. With the fallout between it and the United States over Ukraine, even with the tariffs between the United States and Europe, and the looming demise of NATO. I mean, at least this is how it's been presented recently. How do you see international institutions of law faring when it seems they are needed more than ever?
I think we are in a really tricky situation. It's not about international criminal law, aspect, but I think this is there will be a game between all these powers, and France and the EU will try to show the muscles and say that they are strong before the US, and they are trying to negotiate, a better relationship with the USA. But at the end, I think that we are crossing a period where all the rules are now exceptions. And they are exceptions because we are applying double standards. We are applying standards on commercial issues, on judicial issues, on human rights issues. So this is not really a good signal for the future. But we are still really focused on the obligation to cooperate with all the international obligation of France in the EU. We are really focused on France about this case, and to ensure that the responsible for crimes or the responsible for violation of international law should be brought to justice, should be named and shamed, and that we hope that such authorization, let's say for the case of the flight of Benjamin Netanyahu, won't be issued in the future. And we hope that now France will understand that this is the momentum to take the lead and to be one of the powers today to give a right signal for the respect of international law.
There is a change in the tone of France, and in particular President Macron, since the start of the war. And fast forward, even crackdown on people who are demonstrating against the genocide in France, in Paris. And then we fast forward now that he makes a statement that France might recognize the state of Palestine as early as this June. Is this only lip service? Do you feel, what change? Does he mean it? Will he be able to actually do such a thing? I mean, what made that change in his tone from going 100% in supporting Israel's retaliation on Palestinians early on to now talking about genocide and then the recognition of the state of Palestine?
Yes, this is really an interesting question because yes, he was in Egypt and he said a speech about recognizing the state of Palestine as a kind of good step for the situation. Of course, I'm quite happy that France will recognize the state of Palestine, and we wait for it in June maybe. But the state of Palestine is currently recognized as a sovereign nation by 150 nations today in the world. So I'm not sure that it will change a lot because what is really important for me is that there is genocidal acts and genocidal speech in Gaza. There is a military occupation. There is colonization. So I don't want that this kind of speech, which is really good in diplomacy, will hide the real troubles, the real question. And so that's why with our association, we send different letters, several letters to the French presidency to warn about the situation in Gaza, about the ordinance of the International Court of Justice, about the international arrest warrants. And we sent on the 7th of March 2025 a formal letter, which is a kind of notice before taking action in front of the French jurisdiction, saying that France needs to prove what has been done for Palestinian people in Gaza who are dying, who are starving since October 2023. So we are asking for clarification. And I think that they are the most important issues today. Of course, it's a good signal for Palestine and for Palestinian people, but the question is they need to be in good condition to have the states, and they have already the states. We don't need the declaration of France for the states of Palestine being a state. It's always has been recognized by a lot of states in the Assemblée Générale of the United Nations, and France has collaboration and with the Palestinian Authority. So it's a good signal. We will see the acts. We don't want to hear more and more speech, and we really want to have clarification and acts, evidence of what has been done by France, by our country, to prevent the genocide in Gaza and to help Palestinian people to survive and to live like any other people in the world.
So far, the ICC has issued arrest warrants for Benjamin Netanyahu and his former defense minister, Yoav Gallant. But there are hundreds of Israeli soldiers and military generals and others who are involved in these war crimes. And I know there are organizations looking to add their names. And now some of these organizations are targeting dual nationals who committed war crimes in Gaza and returned to France, to Canada, to the UK, and so forth. I don't know if your organization is involved in, if JURDI is involved in making sure that French citizens, or I assume with also dual national Israeli passports, who have gone to Gaza, fought in a war, filmed themselves committing these war crimes, posted them, publicly on social media, and came back now living amongst the people. How How does number one, the French government react to this, and then organizations like yours, when it comes to French citizens going and committing war crimes in another country and returning like as if nothing happened, returning to their homes in France?
JURDI, our association, was founded in 2024, and we bring together lawyers, judges, professors, legal counsel, and we have one common objective with two missions. We want to offer credible source of information and knowledge, and we take legal action. So we take legal action before national, European, and international courts to this question. At this stage, we have taken legal action in the civil, let's say, civil law, and we are collaborating, and we have submitted an amicus curiae in partnership with the International Federation of Human Rights in front of the ICC during, the procedure when the UK said that the ICC could not be competent for issuing arrest warrant against Israeli chief and leaders. And at the same time, we are collaborating with some of the lawyers and organizations in France to collect material evidence and to bring a legal action on this subject. But we are a young organization, and in France, we need to have 5 years of existence before doing any criminal litigation before the French authorities. So we're still collaborating, let's say, in shadow with other organizations and NGO. But we have heard about the great work of the Hind Hajab Foundation, which has already submitted several actions for namely binational soldiers. We have in France one of the most famous lawyers, but he's now among us today. He's dead. Gilles Devers has submitted an action in front of the French jurisdiction against one binational soldier, French and Israeli. The French authorities classified for the moment the action. So I cannot talk about this action because I'm not involved in this action. But we are working on this. We are working a lot with a lot of French NGO, which are really committed, and they work a lot to have evidence and really critical evidence with the identity of the soldiers. But since then, since 18 months, we didn't have any cooperation from the French authorities about all the soldiers that left France to join the army, the Israeli occupation army, and since the war in Gaza. So we didn't hear any relevant information, and we are not sure that France would cooperate effectively to even start to investigate about this soldier when they come back in France. The war is really horrible, and even for reasons of public order, we need to know who will be the soldier that will come back in France. And since then, we don't have any information, and it's quite difficult to know who of these soldiers are French and if they will come back on the territory.
Sarah Sameur, thank you for coming on Arab Talk.
Thank you very much, Jamal. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
That's the voice and the face of Sarah Sameur. She is an international law and human rights attorney and member of the Council for JURDI. They wrote a letter to Macron, Jamal. It's clear that under the obligations of the ICC and the ICJ, France was obligated to intercept the plane that Netanyahu was on and issue an arrest. It seems like Macron, like much of the rest of the world, is turning a blind eye to the arrest warrants for Benjamin Netanyahu.
Well, it's really interesting because recently President Macron said that France will recognize Palestine probably as early as June during a trip he made to Egypt. He has been changing his tone, since the past few months. Considering when this whole thing unfolded, France took a very strong position in support of Israel, just like many EU countries, just like the United States. And I think as things progressed and they've witnessed, I mean, you cannot basically unsee what is being broadcast on television with children being slaughtered, amputees, attacks on, as we're going to talk about that, the paramedics, hospitals, etc., that now France has been changing its tone, yet it allowed the airplane of Benjamin Netanyahu to fly over its airspace twice, once in February and then again in April. And what's notably is that actually, if you look at, some people showed how the flight path of this airplane, it was carefully orchestrated to avoid flying over certain countries. So
Yeah.
it's still a concern, but France wasn't one of those countries that allowed it, but then it avoided other countries that they didn't receive. I mean, the Israelis didn't receive assurance that they won't intercept, the flight path, because, your airspace, that's over a sovereign country, you have the right to intercept a plane, bring it down, arrest, if there is a wanted person by the ICC. And France kind of gave them the nod, like, okay, it's fine, you can leave, come, because Benjamin Netanyahu was in Hungary, and then fly over France and so forth. But anyway, moving on to our stories here, Jess. The Israeli military unit involved in the killings of 15 Palestinian paramedics and rescue workers in the Gaza Strip just a week or so ago was under the command of a brigade led by a notorious Israeli general, previously accused by some of his own troops of having contempt for human life. Which is the Golani, one of the Army's 5 infantry brigades, which opened fire on 2 convoys of ambulances in Rafah on March 23rd and dug a mass grave to cover the bodies of those killed until the corpses could be retrieved by a UN team 6 days later. Try to hide the evidence. They try to deny that they've attacked the convoy. They try to say that they didn't. The convoy wasn't clearly representing itself as medics or as ambulances, which now the whole world saw a video disputing that, and then not only this, but also some of those bodies that later on were retrieved and exhumed. There's a newly released post-mortem results that were published that found several of those killed had a close-range gunshot wounds to the head and chest, and were discovered with their hands or legs tied. I mean, totally, just presented lies. Oh, we mistakenly shot at these cars because we felt threatened. But then you find out not only they killed them, that they knew that they were paramedics, and not only they killed them at a close range, but some of them were also had their hands and legs tied, basically execution style.
Right.
So that's the 14th Brigade, which is part of the division led by Brigadier General Yehuda Vach, who former officers, his own officers, say designated a kill zone in Gaza. He's the one that basically was designating kill zones in Gaza, which resulted in the arbitrary killings of Palestinian civilians. And many soldiers said or alleged that VAC's lack of operation discipline not only killed Palestinians in Gaza, but also endangered soldiers' lives.
Yeah. So this is not a new story, Jamal. The Israeli government and the military have been lying for decades in terms of the massacres and the genocide in Gaza right now. They lie virtually every single day. This particular lie caught them red-handed, literally and figuratively. They posted, all these stories. This this team, this group of Palestinians didn't declare itself, wasn't obvious that they were paramedics and they were moving suspiciously, is all a complete lie. The video, as you referred to, showed clearly and unequivocally that their emergency lights were on, they were flashing, they were in accordance with the ICRC rules of engagement with paramedics and emergency vehicles move through these situations. But perhaps the most grotesque aspect of this lie, Jamal, you alluded to, that many of these paramedics, many of these health workers were shot execution style, close range in the head and chest, and were tied up. This is not just a war crime, Jamal, but it reflects a kind of brutality that we keep seeing over and over and over again in Gaza and the West Bank, that Palestinians are being brutally massacred in ways that are just incomprehensible. And yet, I have to ask you, Jamal, did you see much outrage or coverage of this in the mainstream media? Not really. This is really a gross abuse at every single level. Crimes against humanity, crimes against healthcare workers, execution-style murders, lying. This is the Israeli playbook.
Well, as you mentioned, Jess, today is Palm Sunday. By the way, as we're recording this show, and Israel bombed the last standing or operational hospital, which is the Baptist hospital. It's the Baptist hospital next to a church in Gaza, and doctors and nurses were
killed,
wheeling off patients in gurneys and in their beds, trying to escape that bombing. I mean, this is where we're at now. So I'm not surprised that the Western media is not talking about this, even though this is reported. I've seen the news. I've read about it in the New York Times. I've read this article that we're talking about in the Guardian, in the British Guardian. My problem is not just the reporting. My problem is that it's not moving the governments that keep supporting Israel and supplying it with weapons and covering up for it, that they're, when the Israelis sees, okay, well, you remember when the Israeli general, people I think might have forgotten, where they were adamant about defending their action and saying that Israel does not bomb hospitals. Now they're in full view, not only bombing hospitals and killing doctors and arresting doctors, they're killing nurses and they're killing paramedics and patients and attacking and patients, whatever, all publicly, and it's not making a difference. It's not moving the pendulum, as far as stopping their action.
Yeah, and just to break it down and to use this as a transition to our next story, Jamal, maybe it's not changing the actions of certain governments, primarily the United States, some of its European allies, and the more fascistic governments that are emerging now in and around Europe. But what has changed dramatically, and this is really a big story, Jamal, is the fact that Americans now view Israel in a very negative light. This is dramatic. I mean, it wasn't less than 2 years ago, not more than 2 years ago, Jamal, that the favorability rating for Israel in general was still above 50%, despite a genocide, despite all the horrific crimes against humanity that Israel committed and continues to commit. Now, with the most recent Pew poll, the majority of Americans view Israel in a very negative light. This is huge. So Israel's campaign, Jamal, to kind of justify in some way its brand, its government, its military, to justify the slaughter and the genocide of Palestinians is not working, obviously. It's clearly not working because the
No,
world, and especially the United States, people see things very differently.
yeah, and you're referencing the poll by the Pew Research Center, which said that more than half of U.S. adults, 53%, now express an unfavorable opinion of Israel, up from 42% in March 2022. So that's like a huge jump. But what's interesting about this, of course, you have to break it down because you also alluded to this, that it's totally different numbers. The younger you are, which is
Right.
That's the young generations. But also there's a major difference between Democrats and Republicans in this country. So Democrats are much more likely to express unfavorable opinions of Israel, and that is than Republicans. That is 69%, almost 70% have unfavorable, versus with the Republicans, 37%. In 2022, 53% of Democrats and 27% of Republicans had negative views of Israel. Now the number jumped to 69 to 37. So even within the Republicans, 10 percentage points moved. With the Democrats, it's significant, 69%. Younger and older Democrats alike have turned more negative towards Israel in general. So over the 3-year period, basically what the poll results was looking at, but I think the most important thing that with the younger Democrats, the change is 23 percentage points.
Right.
That's big. That's big. So
That's huge.
And this is the first time that collectively between Republicans and Democrats that you could say more than half the country in the United States is against what Israel is doing. That's the unfavorable. That's more than half the country. Yeah, it's close, 53%.
No,
but
that's
still,
significant,
but
Jamal.
still more than half the country is saying that enough is enough with us supporting the genocide. Yet that hasn't changed yet, unless something's going to happen soon. I don't know. I mean, what's going to happen in the future, but definitely, and we should mention, because I want to move on to the next story about Facebook and Instagram, is the fact that this is happening. I didn't have time to do my research, but APAC and other companies are spending millions and millions and millions of dollars. We know with the last election, but they're spending millions and millions of dollars always to enhance, the view of Israel in the United States. I mean, that's their whole role.
It's not working.
And apparently it's not working because
No,
this
it's
is
not
organic. It's an organic change.
Yeah,
with
I
the
mean,
sentiment here.
Yeah, and the reality is, Jamal, I mean, the Israeli Hezbollah machine and the AIPACs and the JCRCs and all of the pro-Israel groups that are trying to whitewash, pinkwash, greenwash the brand or the perception of Israel, they can spend millions, they can spend billions. It's not working. And this gets to the last story, as you said. I mean, there's a massive campaign to remove pro-Palestine posts and narratives and information from Facebook and Instagram. But the reality, Jamal, is that people get their information from multiple sites, and people's eyes do not deceive them. They see the reality, they see the brutality, they see the evilness of the Israeli military and government policy committing this genocide, and they don't accept it. And this generational shift that we're seeing, this kind of negative view of the majority of Americans, is so dramatic, Jamal. really believe that whatever freakouts that the Hasbro machine is doing, they don't have any answer to reality, unfortunately. And removing pro-Palestine posts from Facebook and Instagram, it's like, okay, but what about the hundreds of other channels on TikTok, on all the other forms of social media where information gets out? Basically, people have a negative view of Israel and will continue. So deep changes for this society, Jamal.
Right, and our final story is about that leak that exposed what Facebook is doing on posts on Instagram and Facebook, where they had a sweeping crackdown, basically removing any post that is supportive of Palestinians or critical of the genocide. And this is no new news for us, because we talked about this.
Well, they do it to us too,
and we've experienced it.
Yeah.
And then, but it's actually bigger than what I thought, because this is the data show that Meta has complied with 94% of takedown requests issued by Israel since October 7, 2023. In other words, the Israeli government is running the show. We are not talking about just censorship, like self-censorship within within Meta. And it's basically what they do is the Israeli government puts a request for takedowns, and they focus generally, on anything that's critical of that. But what's interesting about this is Meta allows some governments to kind of control things within the country. In other words, like posts within Israel. But that's not what the Israeli government was doing. They were basically censoring global posts.
Right.
So if somebody posts something in the United States, Israel complains about it, Meta obliges and removes it. I mean, this is the thing. And when we talk about what did I say, 94%?
94, yeah.
It's crazy. That's like might as well call it 100%. Anything they don't like. So within these past few years, they removed over 90,000 posts, basically. And Israel also uses AI. So some posts were removed within seconds, basically, after they were people put them there.
But it's not working, Jamal.
Well, let me just two more things. It's not working, but within Meta, within its key leadership positions, okay, so added to this whole thing, which they have employees that have connections to the Israeli military.
Right.
The integrity organization that they have called one called the integrity organization within Meta is run by Guy Rosen, who is a former Israeli military official who served in the Israeli military's Signals Intelligence Unit 8200. So right there, he's sitting right there, was working with, I don't know if still is, working at Meta. The Meta's director of public policy for Israel is Jordana Cutler, who also intervened to investigate pro-Palestine content. Cutler is a former senior Israeli government official and advisor to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. You've been listening to Arab Talk on KPOO San Francisco 89.5 FM. Go to our website, arabtalkradio.com, to download the latest shows, and we'll talk to you next week.
See you next week.